There are a lot of different types of graphic software out there, and it's only increased with time. However, some of them are only for Mac, some of them are only for PC, some of them are rather expensive. Depending on your situation and what you're running, you may not have access to very many. Now, there is one that I do want to briefly introduce because there are some pretty neat things that you can do with it. So I'm just going to go to Google and I'm going to type Piskel, which is like pixel spelled wrong. And you can see it right here, this first link. Instead of Googling it, you can actually, of course, type the web address, which is piskelapp.com, and you should get this. Now, this is an online editor, but if your internet is inconsistent, or if you're on a laptop and you take it other places, you don't always have access to cellular or Wi-Fi in some of the places you go, you can download an offline version, which I have not tried and I don't know how good it is, but it's supposed to be the same. So I'm going to very quickly show some of the things that this can do. So I'm just going to click Create Sprite. Actually, my version of Safari is not updated, so let's try this in Firefox. If yours looks anything like this, update your browser or use a different browser. There we go, much better. So it should look more or less like this. So we have some tools here on the left. We have a workspace here. We have a preview up here. We have different frames here. And I'll kind of explain what these do in just a second. So we can add new frames here if we want. What these essentially do is if we have one with a drawing on it, and then we have another with a drawing on it, and so on. If you look at our preview up here, it plays one after the other and it loops, and I can change the speed of this if I want. And of course, right now that's not impressive, but I just wanted to put something down so you could see it really quickly. And of course, if you only have one frame, then there's nothing to play, so it's just going to be consistent. We have quite a few different tools here. We do have a paint bucket. We have a vertical mirror pen that will draw the same things on both sides. So I could make like a little water buffalo type thing here, and it could draw it the same on both sides if I want to make sure that it's very symmetrical. Here's the paint bucket, which obviously is not symmetrical. We have paint all pixels of the same color, and that's kind of cool. So if I want to change both of these, I could choose a different color, and it's going to paint everything of that color with the new one. Eraser, which I already used. The stroke tool for straight lines. So I can hold and drag to make straight-ish lines. A rectangle tool, which can let me make rectangles which are empty, but of course I can use the paint bucket to fill them in. Circle tool that is the same way. A couple different selection tools here. I have a pen size, which affects not just the pen, but also things like the rectangle. See, the border is thicker. A move tool, which I can move everything around if I need to. A shape selection tool, which I can click on a certain thing of a particular color, and I can Command C and then move that to somewhere else. So it's currently on my clipboard, and you can see how I'm moving it around, and I can press Command V if I'm happy with where it is, and it will become permanent. This does have Command Z for undo, which is great. And of course, if I don't want to use that, I could also use like a rectangle selection tool to also Command C and move something around, or a lasso, which works pretty well. We have a lighten tool, which we can use to make highlights. We also have a darken tool, so if I hold Command, it will then darken pixels instead of lightening them, which is a pretty quick and easy way to make shadows instead of having to try to choose or figure out a darker color that would look decent here. Now, how well you like this is kind of up to you. You can see it's kind of inconsistent. Instead of just holding down, as I was lightening or darkening, if I hold Shift as well as Command, then it will only apply that effect once, instead of having it get really, really dark if I'm accidentally on the same spot for too long. So that's also helpful. And of course, I can do that over and over again without too much warning, without too much concern, which is a pretty nice feature. If I'm not holding Command, I can use it to lighten pixels. Also using Shift, so that way it doesn't lighten more than one time. For each of my each action. You also have some other fairly familiar hotkeys. If you're familiar with Photoshop, then you might know that the left and right brackets will make things bigger or smaller. Those same hotkeys work in here. You also have the dithering tool, which if you aren't familiar with dither, it's the idea that you don't really have partial transparency in this. If you want something to be partially transparent, you basically alternate between colored pixels and not colored pixels. So this will color every other pixel, so that way you get sort of a see-through effect, which isn't great, but that's how it was done in a lot of the really old retro games, which is sort of the way that this is being styled as. So Command Z a little bit. If you want to choose a color that's already on here and you don't have the color anymore, you can use your color picker. Colors that you've recently chosen are shown here. I can add a new color, and I can have quite a few different colors actually in here before they start to delete the previous ones. And you can even see down here the RGB values, which is kind of cool. We have secondary and primary colors. If you like, you can actually even type hex values here. And you can see the primary or secondary, so you can switch back and forth if you would like, which you can quickly alternate between by painting with left click or right click, which can be really useful. So there's a lot of neat little tricks that they built into this to make it convenient and easy. Now on this side we have a whole different set. We can do stuff like flipping horizontal, which actually flips the whole thing. Keep in mind this is symmetrical, so it's not obvious, but if I mar my illustration a little bit and I flip it, you can see the whole thing is flipping. I can rotate. I can clone something, and I can center stuff as well. And now you can see it kind of bobbles due to that slight change there. Some of the different colors that I've used, you can see these are all the different colors that are being used in this graphic. If I add a new color, then it adds it to the palette here. We actually have multiple layers, which can be nice because then you can draw on top of something without having to worry about possibly deleting what was below it. So instead of actually ruining my illustration by putting this blue line on here, I actually could have put it on a new layer and still had my nice little water buffalo instead of destroying it as I have. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of these for now. If I have drawn something and I don't want to have to try to redraw it each time on these new frames, instead of adding a new frame, I can actually duplicate the frame, which is a great way of making little changes to something. Like maybe have a character walk, so you can duplicate him and then just make small changes. We also have some nice tools over here. You have preferences, which can change the FPS, the background, some of these different things. You can have a pixel grid on here if you want. So that versus that. So lots of nice features. I think one of the best features is the exporting option, which can include GIF, PNG, or a few other options. If you're making some sort of game character, this can include exporting sprite sheets right through here, which is very convenient. If you do decide to export an animated GIF as an actual GIF, and I'll just make a few little changes to this, just so that way we can actually see that it is animated. The way it works is you basically hit download, and it should pop up like this. Hopefully, I have seen it pop up in the browser before, where then you might need to tell it to save as instead. So that's pretty much this tool, or at least the basic interface of it. I will show how to make a simple character and actually import it into a simple game creation software, notably Stencil, and that will be in the next video.